This is True Voice Unfiltered, the podcast where raw truth meets real transformation. I'm your host, Daria Anne, ghostwriter, content strategist, and holistic health warrior. No, I'm not a doctor, nurse, nutritionist, or any kind of medical professional, and this show does not dispense medical advice. I'm just an informed patient sharing what I've learned on my own healing journey. I also interview accomplished authors, speakers, entrepreneurs, and functional medicine practitioners who are transforming lives. If you're ready to break free from the sick care system, reclaim your health, and transform your life, you're in the right place. Let's get unfiltered. Hi, everyone. Welcome to True Voice Unfiltered. Today's episode was not one that I planned, and as a matter of fact, it was not something I intended to start off my new year. And I am talking about pet loss, especially when it's unexpected, when your dog is young, as mine was. Willow was not yet 5 years old, and they suddenly become ill. The deterioration accelerates so rapidly that you have no choice to make but the most merciful choice, and that is to help them cross the rainbow bridge. Man, I'm finally able to maybe talk about this today. We're going to see how far I get. But I wrote a blog about it that seemed to resonate with so many people. And let me just point out for all the people out there who are going to say, you're not a dog mom. The dog wasn't your child. I know. Pets are not children. I am a pet owner. I get all of that. Pets are still family. I grew up with a German Shepherd, a cat, followed by 2 other cats, another German Shepherd. I've had animals, throughout my growing up years. And for a while, for many of my adult years, I did not have a pet. And it was actually very lonely looking back. I don't know why I never adopted a pet until about 2019 when Rosie came into my life. And to tell you about Rosie, she was a pity mix that really transformed my outlook on pit bulls. And that's another thing I'm sick of. I'm really tired about all the stereotypes about pit bulls, who, in my mind, are the most abused breed out there. And I know lots of dogs of varying breeds deal with abuse from evil humans. But I feel like of all of the breeds, pit bulls face the most, I'll say, prejudice and bigotry, mainly because evil humans use them as bait dogs and in dog fighting rings. And it's absolutely vile and disgusting and ought to be stopped. But regardless, I was one of those people that was afraid of pit bulls until Rosie came into my life. And she was just an amazing dog. She came from Puerto Rico. She was a rescue after Hurricane Maria, which I believe happened in the fall of 2017. And they gathered up many dogs after the hurricane was over and flew them over to Florida. And Rosie ended up at the Broward County Humane Society, which I have to say is one of the best humane societies in the state, if not maybe even the country. I mean, it's just beautiful. It's just a beautiful place. Everyone there loves and cares for these animals. I mean, it's obvious how much they do love them. And it's a longer story, but Rosie came into my life through Broward County Humane Society in Fort Lauderdale. And she was just an absolute angel. What a sweetheart. She was a brown and white pity mix, as I said. One of the sweetest dogs I've ever known. Very calm, very gentle. She was about 6 years old when I got her, and we took to each other immediately. I mean, she was just an amazing little dog who had been through so much. And looking back, she probably was traumatized. I mean, who wouldn't be? Although, the Humane Society and her rescuers were not aware of her background and situation, they could safely assume that Rosie probably wasn't treated very well, if not abused outright by whoever owned her. And yes, of course, she could have gotten separated from her family in an accident. I mean, hurricanes are pretty traumatic for everyone involved, and you're trying to save your house and your family, so it's very possible that she was loved and she just somehow wound up alone in the hurricane. Or it's possible that her owners didn't care about her and just bring her to safety during the hurricane. Either way, she survived, and thankfully she was not chained to anything, and I think her mobility enabled her to survive. But the poor dog was traumatized by the time she came to me. Although she was beautifully trained, didn't even have to train her. The dog was just an angel. She walked well on a leash. Her only thing was she loved to chase squirrels. In fact, I watched this sweet little dog slay a squirrel right in front of me one time, because there were times when I literally just had to let go of the leash to prevent myself from hitting the pavement, because she saw a squirrel and it was like she turned into this predator. It's kind of funny to watch. But I would say I was simultaneously grossed out and impressed
when she slayed the squirrel right in front of me, and then I couldn't get it out of her mouth. And finally, I got her to drop it. And unfortunately, we left it on someone's lawn. And I'm very sorry about that. But I was so grossed out that I just wanted to get out of there right away. But she was just a sweetheart. She used to make these scrunchy faces, like whenever I would come home after coming back from running errands or an appointment or whatever, and I'd come back in the house and she'd greet me like she'd scrunch her face together and she'd wiggle her whole body, and it was just absolutely the cutest thing. So she came to me in 2019. In early 2021, February 4th to be exact, my brother Ralph passed away from Alzheimer's, and I've talked about him a lot. And I even have a couple of family interviews and episodes about him for Down Syndrome Awareness Month. So they are in the playlist. You can find them on my YouTube channel. My mom and my brother Mark and I paid tribute to him in a series of videos. So I won't go into his whole story here, but just suffice it to say, it was pretty traumatic and upsetting. And I dealt with a lot of conflicting emotions because anyone who's been through it, watching a loved one suffer from Alzheimer's, you know it's the long goodbye for a reason, right? And this was about 10 years in the making, but I would say the last 3 years, it just accelerated. His decline just accelerated quickly. And because this was a human being who had already overcome so many challenges in his life with grace and dignity and humor, it was really hard to watch this unfold. And I was pretty mad at God for a while because I didn't feel like it was fair that he had to deal with this too, on top of everything else that he'd overcome in life. But Ralph didn't think of it that way. So anyway, after I had to leave Rosie in Brevard County where I was living to fly up north, thank God my parents had gotten hospice. Ralph started on hospice, I would say, like about 6 months before he actually passed. And my sister Carolyn was keeping me informed, and I basically planned. Actually, that's another story, probably for another video, but I had initially planned my flight for a specific date, and then on Southwest Airlines, and my sister called me up and said, I think you need to get here sooner. I don't think he's going to wait that long. So I had to call Southwest Airlines. And I am going to tell this story right now because I believe in pointing out when people do the right thing and provide excellent customer service. And this is also what I consider a sign, because I am a very spiritual person. I'm a praying person, and I called Southwest Airlines and a woman named Grace answered the phone. And of course, I was bawling my eyes out, explaining the situation, that my brother was dying. I thought I was going to have more time, so I booked the flight on a certain date, but now I needed to move it up. And she said, honey, don't worry about it. I mean, this woman was amazing. She changed my flight. She didn't charge me. I got there in time. I spent, I think, like 7 to 10 days up there. And maybe I'll do a video about that. I do, as difficult as that was, and this was actually, well, at the time, it was the second time I'd watched someone pass through hospice. The first time was a 5-year-old, and man, that'll stay with me forever, even though it wasn't a member of my family, but just close family friends. Whew. That's another story for another day. But this was my second time going through hospice, and I didn't know it then, but I would go through hospice a third time with my dad on December 1st, 2022. I remember thinking, as we all sat around his bed, he had a hospital bed in my parents' living room in their townhouse that they were living in at the time. And thank God he knew who I was. I mean, he hugged me, he recognized everyone. But it was tough. I mean, it dragged on, and there were several times where we thought he had passed, and then it turned out he was still breathing, and it was a lot of emotion. In the middle of all that emotional chaos, though, I do remember thinking that I wished everyone could pass this way, surrounded by loved ones, at home, in a very peaceful environment, knowing that they were loved. And I don't think you can ask for more than that, and Ralph certainly knew that, and he took all that love with him. Okay, so before I start crying, my point is that when I flew back home to Melbourne, Rosie was there for me. And she just helped me through that whole situation. I had no way of knowing in February of that year that I would lose Rosie on December 28th of that year. She got violently ill a couple days after Christmas. So let's say they believe it started on the evening of the 27th into the 28th, got violently ill, vomiting. It was horrible. And looking back, I wish I'd handled it differently. And no one was around. I was calling people. It was the middle of the night. No one was around to help me. I covered her in a blanket. And as soon as the morning came around, I called a friend. We rushed her to Aloha Pet and Bird Hospital, where they are fantastic there. And I will talk more about them in a minute. But I rushed her to the hospital there, the pet hospital. And I remember the vet sitting me down and saying, if it's cancer and it's limited to her spleen, she can live without a spleen and we'll just remove her spleen and the dog will live a full life. If we open her up and we find out that it's spread everywhere, there's nothing we can do. And in fact, he sent me home. And looking back now, I don't know why I ever went home. I mean, it was only 10 minutes away from where I lived, but I went back home and he actually called me from the operating room to say that the cancer was everywhere and that the best thing I could do would be to put her to sleep. So I was, wrapping my mind around having to do that. And it was on my way out the door when he called me back to tell me that Rosie had passed on the operating table. So that was really tough. And I remember I sat in the exam room. Okay, I'm going to start crying, but I sat in the exam room. They brought her out. She was covered in a little blanket, like a gray blanket with little white bones all over it. And I don't know how long I was in there, but it felt like a long time. And I have to say, the entire staff there at Aloha are among the most compassionate people I've ever dealt with. They didn't rush me. They told me to take my time. They sent me a sympathy card later. They took care of, included in the package that I paid for, was the cremation services from Pet Angel. And I later received a little coaster with her paw print, a box with her ashes, and Aloha Pet and Bird Hospital in Indian Harbor Beach. They are fabulous. And, honestly, I can understand that statistic about the suicide rate being high among veterinarians because it's tough. I mean, they deal with people like me crying every single day. Someone has to put their pet down or they have to share bad news. And it's tough. And let me tell you something, that grief hit me just as hard as grieving for my brother. So it's not that I'm not trying to equate a pet's value to a human's value. I'm just saying that the grief I felt was just as overwhelming, just as overwhelming, just as powerful, just as heavy as any grief I've felt after a human passes. So if that makes me a bad person, so be it. But that was how I felt. And it was completely unexpected. But less than 2 weeks later, and I'm not going to go into detail, but less than 2 weeks later, Willow came into my life. She also came from the shelter. Willow was a tricolor border collie mix who I'm sure had either Greyhound or Dalmatian or some other breed that has long legs in her because Willow had very long legs, a long tail, and a long tongue. Like I said, she was a year old and she was high energy. If Rosie was medium energy, couch potato when we were inside and she only turned into a predator for squirrels when we were taking a walk, this dog was the complete opposite. I mean, I had the hardest time walking with her because she would spin around in circles. She was really strong. She was very high. She was tall. She could reach countertops that Rosie could not reach. She really gave me a run for my money. And there were times when I just broke down in tears because I'm not the kind of person who would ever return a dog to the shelter. I knew that Willow had already been returned once. I was never going to do that to her again. And I also knew that I couldn't continue on the way things were. So Willow and I learned to get along with each other through professional training. And eventually she became pretty good on the leash. I mean, she was still a strong, powerful dog. Walking her was always a little bit of a challenge, but she improved greatly with training. And my gosh, she was such a loving, sweet, happy dog. I mean, her energy was almost infectious. She just loved her treats. She loved the beach. Whereas Rosie was terrified of the beach, understandably, after her experience. I would take her there, and I might be able to let her get her paws wet, but she didn't want to go any further than that in the ocean. On the other hand, Willow was a body surfer. She would follow me in. She would surf the waves. She loved the other dogs. I mean, there was one dog there, Sadie, that used to, take her collar off. And Willow didn't care. And she would just roll over and let this dog do whatever she wanted to do with her collar. And they would play together. And it was a lot of fun. I used to take her to the dog park also at Wickham Park. And then I kind of stopped doing that because I did read that it really wasn't the best thing for the dog. And looking back, maybe that wasn't the best idea. But the problem is where I live right now, I do not have a fenced in yard. So she wasn't getting exercise because I didn't have an enclosed yard for her to run around in. So the dog park was the next best thing. But mostly I started taking her to the beach and she really loved that. And most people at Canova Park Dog Beach were great. Like the first time I went there, all of the dogs were off the leashes running around, and I had Willow on a leash, and I asked them, like, is this okay? And they're like, yeah, we don't mind. Will she run away? I'm like, I don't think so. And Willow did not run away. In fact, she was kind of a Velcro dog too. There was one time when she was a puppy when she got away from me only because she hadn't been trained and I just didn't know how to walk this dog. And when I got home, I ran around the neighborhood looking for her, and this little kid on his bike said, oh, she went that way. And there she was, and I followed where he pointed, in the direction that he pointed, and there was a dog eventually in front of my front door, Willow. So even when she did sort of run away, she always knew her way back home, and it really only happened maybe once or twice. For the most part, Willow loved her home, loved being around me. She was a great dog during the day. Like when I was working from home, she would play with her toys or sleep on the bed in my office, and I would take her for frequent walks. And, you know, another benefit, one of many benefits of having a dog, is that it definitely enables you to get up away from your desk, get away from the computer, and get some sunlight, which we all know is very healthy for us. So dogs really help you get your vitamin C every day. And it is good to take a break. Give your eyes a break, walk away. As a creative person, I know that when I'm ghostwriting a book or even editing a book or writing a blog or a web page, sometimes walking away is actually beneficial. You come back refreshed, ready to go with re-energized creativity. So I highly recommend that. So, hey, if you're looking for another reason to get a dog, there's a good one. Improve your vitamin C, increase your vitamin C, because it's very important for your health. And I'm not going to get into a discussion about the past 6 years, not on this podcast. So my point is that Willow had become a treasured member of my family. I loved this dog, even though we didn't start off so well. And that's why the day after Christmas, 2025, when I noticed she was drinking an excessive amount of water, I got really concerned. So I kept an eye on her for a few days because I thought, well, maybe I just gave her something and I didn't realize it was too salty because I'd given her like leftover turkey from Christmas. But it didn't stop. She kept drinking a lot and I could tell something was wrong. So that led to a flurry of back and forth vet visits, blood work, imaging tests, you name it, credit card here, just pulling out the credit card. And you know what? I would do it again in a heartbeat because I'll pay that off. But I wanted to know what was going on with her. Like I said, she hadn't even turned 5. Her birthday, she would have turned 5 on March 7th of this year. And I just wanted to make sure that, you know, I was figuring out what was wrong with her. So Willow had hypercalcemia, and we initially hoped that it was caused by an endocrine system problem. So she had 2 parathyroid tests. They both came back normal. An imaging test found nodules on her spleen. So we biopsied those to see if maybe they were cancerous, and that's what was causing the problem. Turned out they were normal. But when she had the imaging test, they also found enlarged nodules near her aorta. And we could logically conclude, because we ruled out everything else, that was cancerous, and that was causing her hypercalcemia. I didn't do anything at first. I wanted to just bring her home and kind of see how she was doing, but she declined really quickly. And this was a dog who loved to eat. She loved her treats. She loved her pup cups. We had a routine, you know, after she went out and did her business, she would get a little vanilla ice cream cup, and she knew as soon as I opened that freezer to pull one out, she would run over to her doggy cot and sit down because she knew that's where I wanted her to eat her ice cream. She was a really smart dog, but she stopped eating. She started to look very uncomfortable in her own body. It's hard to explain, but she wouldn't even lay her paws down flat. Like she would lay her paw like this when she was laying down. She couldn't even get up on my bed anymore. I mean, I spent the last several nights of her life sleeping on the floor next to her in my bedroom. And, you know, when I asked the vet, Dr. Lopez, who was wonderful, Dr. Lizette Lopez at Aloha Pet and Bird Hospital, she said that her kidneys were mineralizing from all the calcium. And, you know, when Willow's calcium test, when they first did her calcium test, her score was 1.6, which is really high. And Dr. Lopez told me then, if this test goes, this is already in the danger zone. She's like, if it gets any higher, she could go into multiple organ failure. Well, the second test, like 10 days after that, revealed that her calcium had spiked up to 1.8. Wasn't caused by the endocrine system, wasn't caused by the nodules on her spleen because they were benign. So we concluded that it was these enlarged lymph nodes, cancerous lymph nodes, that were doing it. I mean, I had taken her off of all dairy. So I just mentioned, right, I would give her vanilla pup cups. But as soon as she started drinking a lot and as soon as the test revealed hypercalcemia, I stopped the minerals I had been giving her. I had been giving her canine minerals from Beam and I take the human version myself. That was not the problem, and Beam is a wonderful product. Took her off of that thinking maybe she's getting too much calcium. We took away her cottage cheese, her vanilla ice cream, her whipped cream, all dairy. And 4 weeks later, her calcium had spiked up to 1.8. So it was really beyond my control. The only thing I could control was making sure this dog didn't suffer and that she had a peaceful death. So looking back on what happened with Rosie getting violently ill in the middle of the night, the last thing I wanted was for Willow to become violently ill in the middle of the night because her organs were shutting down and have this long, painful, prolonged death. I didn't want to do that to her. So, wow, I thought I was doing well. I wasn't going to cry on this episode, but I think it's important. So on Friday, January 3rd, my friend Deb and I took Willow to her favorite place, the beach, for the last time. And she swam in the ocean and she had a great time. And because the vet was right across the street, and we just had to cross A1A and turn right into their parking lot, it was really convenient. And I thought, this is the last thing I can do for her. So took her to the beach, and then we went to Aloha Pet and Bird Hospital. And the nice thing was that we used a separate door to get into that area, the special area reserved. So we used a separate door to get into that area that was reserved for this purpose and not have to go through like the main lobby with people and dogs barking and cats meowing and every other kind of animal that they see in there. So we were able to avoid all that chaos, and it was very peaceful. And we were in this lovely room, and they let me sit with her for a while. In fact, they never rushed me. They said, take your time. So I sat there with her for a while. And then I just realized I was just prolonging the inevitable. They brought her back. Now, they put her into a deep sleep first, and they brought her back to me. And then she was strapped on a gurney, and they lowered it. I was sitting on a love seat, and I hugged her. And Dr. Lopez said, she can hear you, so talk to her. So just like I did with Ralph, just like I did with my dad, I told her how much I loved her, and I thanked her for everything. And it was tough. And then finally, Dr. Lopez said, okay, it's time. And she administered the final medication that would stop her heart. And then she checked her heart with a stethoscope, and she said, Willow gained her wings. And then they told me I could stay as long as I wanted. So I sat with her for a while. And I have to say that everyone there, the vets, the vet techs, everyone that works there always treated me with respect. They love the animals. They treated this whole process with so much reverence. I sat in there for a while, and then tech and a vet came, and they said, hey, we just wanted to check on you. There's no rush, but if you want to leave, we will stay here with her. Like there was no time that she was left alone. So I finally left, and I left with them in the room. They stayed with Willow. And it was really hard coming home because when I opened the garage door that leads into the kitchen, Willow was not there to greet me. And it was tough. It was really tough, and it was really lonely. And that's where I want to share a blog that I wrote recently. It's about pet loss grief. And I realized that love means letting go and embracing another soul in need. Just as I embraced Willow after Rosie suddenly died, I decided the day after this happened that I just wanted to be around some dogs. So I went to the Brevard County Sheriff's Office shelter. Now, I, of course, was on their Facebook page. I had seen some of the dogs that they had posted. One of them was a tricolored pit bull that kind of looked like a combination of Rosie and Willow. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. I'm going to go see her. And when I got there, her name was Cassie. And I really hope Cassie has gotten adopted by now. But it turned out like she wasn't really the best fit for me. And the young lady who helped me, she was awesome. Her name was Emerson. She said, based on what you're telling me, I think you would really love Charlotte. So I met Charlotte, who was a pitty mix, kind of like a cinnamon color with a white bib and a little bit of white, a little speck of white on her nose and like at the end of her paws. And she was the cutest little thing. So we brought her outside, and, she didn't really pay much attention to me that day, but she was kind of running around and kind of mostly interacting with the shelter worker. So I thought, oh, that's okay. That's another thing. Dogs in a shelter behave very differently when they get home or when they feel comfortable. So that's just something I highly recommend adopting from a shelter. I actually encourage everyone to adopt from a shelter because let me tell you something, being there was such a wake-up call. In the middle of all that grief, it struck me that I already did everything I could do for Willow, and she was in a better place. But there were dogs here that really needed a home, and seeing them in those concrete kennels even though there's wonderful volunteers, even though the staff is wonderful, they do take them out. It's not the same thing as being in a home. And yeah, it's better than being on the street. But these poor dogs who didn't ask to be here are stuck in these shelters, scared, wondering what's going on, dealing with constant noise and strangers coming in and out. And it just really hit me that it was time to continue that cycle of love. But I didn't make the decision right then and there. I went home and slept on it. But before I slept on it, I asked for some signs. And that's when my cousin Annie, who is, gosh, she's a huge, huge animal lover, has been for a long time, is still involved in rescue, said to me, I have a message from my grandson, and they were out for his birthday, and his name is Dylan. And she sent me this audio message. I had sent her some pictures of Charlotte, and actually of Cassie, too, because I was still kind of wondering, maybe I should adopt Cassie, because she was the reason I went there in the first place. But Annie sends me this this audio message from Dylan, and it says, and he said, Aunt Daria, I want you to adopt Charlotte. And I thought, okay, that's one sign. And then later when Annie got home, she went to change out a tissue holder. So she has like a fancy tissue holder and you put the box of tissues in it. Well, the box of tissues was empty, so she wanted to replace it with a new box of tissues. And this new box of tissues just happened to have the name Willow on it. So that was another thing that kind of stopped me in my tracks. And then I was thinking about the name Charlotte, and one of my good friends who now lives here in Florida lived for many years in Charlotte, North Carolina. So I was kind of making all these connections, and I thought, well, I'm going to go back. This was Sunday, the next day, and I'm just going to see how Charlotte behaves when I see her again. Well, Charlotte did remember me, and when we went outside, she was playful and happy and running around, and I thought, okay, this is my dog. So as it says here, love is a continuum. I didn't plan on adopting a dog immediately. I really didn't. I went to the shelter. Yes, I wanted to meet Cassie. I just wanted to be around dogs. I wasn't really planning on taking one home. But so many vulnerable souls waiting for homes there really kind of woke me up. And I thought, well, I can still grieve for Willow and give another dog a home. And I can still love another dog. So the only thing left to do when I made that decision was Charlotte's spay surgery, which they did on a Monday, and I picked her up the same day. So she was pretty groggy when I brought her home, but super sweet. And look, she's not a replacement. No, every dog is unique. They have their own unique personalities, and they stand on their own. But Charlotte's just a continuation of that love that we feel for pets and that cycle of love. And, she's helping me heal. And loving her feels like I'm honoring Willow in the same way adopting Willow honored Rosie. And here's my little Charlotte girl. So I guess I put this episode together just to let people know that if you're grieving the loss of a pet, it's valid. It's still a loss. Okay, it's not a human, but you still loved a living being. And they gave you unconditional love, which is not something we get from a lot of humans. Okay, there are some exceptions to that. But it hurts because they were family. And they became part of the fabric of your life. Helping an animal cross the rainbow bridge is like the hardest thing you'll ever do, probably, or one of the hardest things you'll ever do. It's just as hard as being there for a loved one on hospice till the very end. But I do think if you are a pet owner, you owe that to your dog or your cats or whatever pet you have to be there through the very end so that they know that you're there. The dog I grew up with, Baron, I wasn't around when my mom decided it was time to take him. I mean, he was very sick. He lived till about 12 or 13, which is kind of the max for a German Shepherd. And I just came home from school one day to find out that my mom, she felt really bad. He was really sick, and she and her friend took care of it. But, and gosh, I've had some traumatic experiences with animals. I had a cat that was killed by a car right in front of me. By a girl who hated me in high school. That's another story for another day. I've since forgiven her. When I was very young, we had a German Shepherd named Cougar who drowned in a neighbor's pool on Thanksgiving Day that year. I didn't always have the opportunity to be with a pet as I helped them, get through to the Rainbow Bridge. Rosie died on the operating table, so I didn't have that opportunity. She kind of took matters into her own hands. So really, this was the first time with Willow that I had to do that. And I'm not going to lie, it's tough. It sucks, actually. I feel good knowing that she knew I was there. And it's one of the bravest things you can do. I think it's pretty cowardly. And getting back to vets committing suicide, one of the reasons they state is that people just drop off their animals and leave them there with strangers, and they're looking around for their owner. And I just think that's just really crappy. The animal was there for you unconditionally, and this is your opportunity to do the same for the animal. And it's hard, and it sucks. and I'm still dealing with it. But your dog deserves nothing less. I mean, they are loyal to the end, and you need to extend that loyalty back to them. I miss Rosie, Willow, Baron, Tab, every pet that I've ever loaned in my life, right? But they've become part of the fabric of your life. And I feel like they're always with me, and that they are in a better place. And I do believe animals have souls. And that was one thing I rejected way back when through Catholic school, when the nuns told us that animals don't have souls. I don't buy that. I believe that they do. And I do believe that they're in a better place and that we'll see them again, because otherwise, what's really the point of all of this? So was it, oh gosh, who said, oh my gosh, I'm paraphrasing and I can't think who said it. Was it Paul Harvey who said, or Will Rogers? I can't remember. If there are no dogs in heaven, I want to go wherever the dogs went. I feel the same way. So if you've lost a dog and you vowed that you're never going to go through that pain again, please reconsider. I mean, going to the shelter, please go to a shelter and adopt. It's quite a wake-up call. Giving a home to a dog who desperately needs one is the most honest way that you can say thank you to your previous pet for all the love that they gave you. So I hope that if you have lost a pet, or if you're going through it now, that this has helped you in some way. It was really hard for me to do this video, but I knew it was important and I wanted to address it because it's something that I've been dealing with, and it has set me back a little bit. I had to catch up on many client projects. I fell behind on podcasting and I just took the time to process everything because it happened so quickly. Like I said, she was not even 5 years old. This was not even a senior dog. And even Rosie wasn't that old. I mean, she was about 8 when that happened to her, but Willow didn't even make it till 5. So you just never know. And, as with humans, we never know. So treat everyone you love with respect. Show them that you love them. Tell them you love them. And enjoy every moment with them because it does go by so quickly. All right, so to Willow, Rosie, Baron, Tab, every pet that I have ever owned and loved, thank you. Please wait for me at the Rainbow Bridge.
Hi, I'm Dr. Liz. I just want to tell you how amazing and easy it was to work with Daria on my book. You see, I've had a book for a while, been sitting on my desk, sitting on my computer. Maybe you might be able to relate to that. And I didn't know what to do, how to take it to the next step, how to make it look polished and edited and easy and useful for my readers. Met with Daria. We had some great conversations. She learned my voice, my goal, my style, and she was able to edit and give me feedback on how to make my message clearer, more focused, polished, and it worked. I have a book. In fact, I have a book and a workbook that she's edited for me and guided me along the pathway. So if you're maybe a little bit like me, that you have a book or you have an idea and you haven't known where to take it, how to take it to the next stage, reach out to Daria. She's a game changer and she's really easy to work with and takes great pride in her work as well. So join me in the published author arena. Reach out to Daria. I'm Dr. Liz.
Hi, everyone. I hope you enjoyed today's episode of True Voice Unfiltered. And if you're a busy professional who wants to leverage the power of a book, blogs, or other content as evergreen brand assets that help you reach your ideal audience, attract more clients, and expand your brand and influence, I welcome you to schedule your free 30-minute discovery call with me. At True Voice Writing Services, I offer professional storytelling in your authentic voice. And in this age of AI, authenticity is more important than ever. I have ghostwritten over a dozen books, edited many, many more, have written SEO-optimized blogs for the past 10 years, and I know how to project your voice, infuse your voice in all content, set you up as the authority and trusted guide in your field, and help you enjoy greater success with personalized content that speaks to your audience. So go ahead and contact me at truevoicewritingservices.com. You can click on this contact button. Reach out to me today. Tell me your story over a virtual cup of coffee. I just ask you to complete this little mini questionnaire, I'll call it. Just a few questions to help me understand a little bit more about you and your business and what your goals are with your content, whether it's books, blogs, press releases, lead magnets, email sequences. I offer a variety of writing services, and I certainly have experience ghostwriting full-length books that my clients use to leverage other things, such as an online course, mastermind groups, one-on-one coaching, workbooks, and other CTAs, which are calls to action. So I invite you to visit me at truevoicewritingservices.com, click on the contact page, reach out to me today. I help purpose-driven professionals transform ideas and expertise into compelling content that builds authority, nurtures trust, and inspires action. With decades of experience ghostwriting books and writing strategic content across multiple industries, I apply clarity, creativity, precision, and your unique brand to every project. Your book is your brand, and I look forward to helping you express yourself through the written word. Contact me at truevoicewritingservices.com, and let's schedule your complimentary 30-minute discovery call today. Thanks for listening.